Right, so I'll give the call now to Senator Conroy. Thank you.
Look, I'm just wondering if you could show me where you've tested 12 million Australian voters' views, and of them 96% have voted above the line, that they really were duped and that they didn't make a conscious decision to vote above the line, knowing there's a registered party had a vote card, versus voting below the line. I was just wondering if you could just point me to where the evidence of that is.
Well, I think the one way to look at this is that some of these...
No, I didn't say look at it. I said, do you have any evidence that shows...
I have what I think is evidence.
Okay.
Okay. Some of these preference deals are very difficult. Someone filling in a ballot paper below the line would be very lucky to get the same preference sequence as is lodged above the line. Voters below the line are much more...
Isn't that why they've voted below the line? Because they want to vote differently? I mean, it's like... To me, a bizarre argument.
I'll explain.
They've chosen to vote below the line because they don't want to follow the party.
I'll give you the numbers. The last Victorian election, last Senate election, where Senator Muir was elected, there were two senators, two from Labor, two from the Coalition elected initially, and then towards the end of the count, the Greens were elected, and then Senator Muir defeated Senator Kroger from the Liberal Party. Towards the end of the count, there were only 5 parties left in the count: Senator Muir, the Greens, the Liberal Party, Palm United, and the Australian Sex Party. For Senator Muir to be where he was at that stage, he required the preference tickets of 20 different parties. So 20 parties with much lower votes had all delivered 100% of their ticket to the Motoring Enthusiast Party. If you look at the below-the-line votes, there was only 6% went to Senator Muir. 37% to the Greens, 21% to the Liberals, 13% to Palm United, 21% to the Australian Sex Party. People filling in their preferences in their own way sort of went to the parties they knew.
But they made the choice to vote below the line so they could do that. 100% of people who voted below the line made the choice they didn't want to follow a party ticket.
And how many people would have made that choice if they didn't have to fill in 93 numbers?
So you object to the number of people...
The choice is asymmetrical.
Below the line, you don't have to be a registered...
You have been herding people above the line for the last 3 decades by making the choice of how to vote asymmetrical. You can walk in, or you can vote one, or you've got to fill in every box below the line. It's a herding process to make people vote above the line. And what those numbers show is that what they're doing, what the parties meeting in their room are doing with their preference tickets, is not at all anything like what the voters...
Meeting in their room and then publishing it so it's available to anybody who wants to look.
In Western Australia, if you wanted to know where your ticket vote went, you had to know what order the Australian Christians and the Shooters and Fishers Party finished. And they were the 9th and 10th placed candidates that flip-flopped and determined the last 2 seats. You could not determine which preference your vote would go to if you voted on a ticket, unless you also determined what order those 2 parties were in. And neither of them were in the race for the final seat. The model is so complex and so dependent on the orderings in which candidates are moved. And in that case, where Mr. Dropulic was elected, he got preferences from 21 parties. Now, I think 18 of them were at the relevant point. 85% of, he got 100% of the 18 parties and 15% below the line. So the 2 candidates who were elected from the lowest vote were the least known of all the candidates for people who filled in their below-the-line vote. I don't think it was a choice that the voters made to vote below the line because they didn't like the tickets. I'm saying the choice that's being offered at the moment is so asymmetric that it forces people, it herds people into voting above the line.
And so you think a fairer system is one that sees 80% of votes exhaust?
That is the New South Wales system with a just one. Yep. These ballot papers indicate vote 1 to 6.
No, let's be clear.
Senator Conroy, I think Mr. Green's answering your question. He's answering your question.
No, he's not answering my question.
He is answering your question.
Even you believe that 50 to 60% will exhaust. Okay. Now, if parties start campaigning, as they're now legally going to be allowed to do, say just vote 1, then you'll get the same result, 80%.
I would point out, if parties had so much effect with just vote 1, that either Lawrence Springborg or Jeff Senior would be Premier of Queensland today. Because 1 in 5 of the seats won by Labor at the last Queensland election were won on preferences. So optional preferential voting is not de facto first past the post.
Just coming...
Senator Conroy.
So I'm just coming... thanks. So I'm just coming back to what the outcome is, and you had a lengthy conversation about getting majority. It's probably, I just define a majority in two different ways. One's a positive majority and one's a blocking majority, being 38. 38 requires 42% of the vote. So you don't have to win the ballot, you don't have to win the election, you just got to be able to get the closest under your system to 42% of the vote to get 3.
Yes, as it is now.
And we've agreed the analysis, you've agreed with the analysis after the person who wrote it consulted with you, so I would hope you would, that the remaining seats will be determined either by preference flows or by whichever party has the largest remainder after the full quotas are allocated to elected candidates.
Yeah, there are some situations.
And you went on to say it's much more likely the Liberals could get 38. Those, I think, were your exact words. I'm happy to check with Hansard, but I think those are your exact
That's the current situation as well.
All right.